All that yearning passion on BBC Two after the Hollywood machine that makes a business of dreams hits a new film's opening weekend when it all gets very, very real.
It's summer in Hollywood. It's when the studios fire their biggest guns. Empires, fragile egos, and hundreds of millions of dollars are all at stake. Judgment Day has arrived. During the summer, there's at least one premiere a week, generating noise and heat for what they describe as a must-see movie. Within hours, its fate will be decided.
You start to get numbers back from the East Coast, about midday on Friday. And right then, it's crazy how early if you're in good shape or bad shape, immediately. And you can extrapolate, the projections as to what kind of weekend you're gonna have, and off that weekend, what sort of figures you're ultimately gonna do. I mean, it's amazing. You spend 2 years writing, prepping, working, shooting, cutting, designing this film, and then it's out for a matter of 2 or 3 hours, and if you have a hit or a turkey, in 2 or 3 hours.
It's the summer of 2001. Talking apes are doing battle with Japanese warplanes. Renegade cops with a voluptuous archaeologist. So who will triumph and who will fall? Everything rides on the opening weekend. Entire studio managements can be sacked for one failed blockbuster. The stars and producers go through the motions, but behind the smiles, everyone is nervous. The stakes are high for all of them.
Certainly the opening weekend is important. The difference between now and when I first started making movies is everyone's aware of it. I mean, it used to be everyone in Hollywood was aware of the top 10 box office. Now, it's like a sporting event. Everyone in the nation and the world is watching who came in #1 this weekend, who's the championship team. And it puts a different pressure on the filmmakers and the studio.
Helena Bonham Carter is the star of Fox Studios' blockbuster Planet of the Apes.
It's become so commercial and so much more sort of controlled by the marketing now. So everything is about selling something and spending a huge amount. I mean, it's sort of become a bit topsy-turvy that, a huge amount of the proportion of the budget of a film is spent selling the thing.
Director Simon West had a hit with Con Air, but that won't save him now if his new film Tomb Raider flops.
Hollywood is a very ruthless, competitive jungle, and if you perform well and your film performs well, everybody loves you. But the second you fail, you're spat out like everybody else. So it is a lot of pressure, but that's why I like it in a way. There's a kind of adrenaline about risking everything on a huge budget and trying to deliver, and hopefully this one will.
Gary Scott Thompson is not yet an established Hollywood screenwriter. Whether he gets to be one could be largely decided in the next few days. His movie, The Fast and the Furious, is a high-octane street racing adventure. Tonight is Thompson's moment of glory. Accompanied by his family, he prepares for the premiere of The Fast and the Furious. His parents have flown in from Northern California for their son's big night.
That's your assigned seating there.
What's these?
That's for the party.
Oh.
It's about $500 if you want to scalp it outside. Just to see the movie.
I think we should tell him we could see him Friday night for...
for $7.50.
Why not?
Cars here, let's go. You guys ready? All right, let's go.
Okay, together.
Yeah, just take the picture. We gotta go.
Take the picture.
All my grandkids want me to get autographs from the stars.
You're not going to. It's Monday night. It's the premiere. There'll be hopefully a lot of press. You know, it's a time to show off and to show the product and how excited people are. It means a lot, and yet it means nothing, because anything could happen. It could be a major, you know, news story, disaster, anything, and, you know, freak snowstorm or whatever, and people won't show up. One of my movies opened on the weekend of the riots in Los Angeles, and there was a curfew in most major cities, and so there was no box office after like 6 p.m. at night. And so because of that, you know, the movie lost $10 million in the first weekend.
The premiere has started, but in Los Angeles, the traffic respects no one.
What is this?
Gailey. You want to turn on Westwood?
No, you can go up Gailey, can't you?
Huh?
Yeah, you can. It's at Broxton.
It's a chance for the production team and their friends to see the finished movie. It's a safe crowd.
I got a 187 in Glendale. Cops are all over it, man. We're good to roll. I repeat, good to roll. All right. Let's race. Right.
They loved it, absolutely loved it. They went nuts for the stuff. Screaming and hollering, yelling, cheering, clapping, I mean everything. It was pretty amazing. This was fun. Now we got to sweat. You got to worry now. And hopefully, you know, the audience that was there will be the same audience that goes to see it and will like it as much as they do. So now it's sort of sweating time. Dayman!
When the movie opens in 4 days' time, the customers will have to pay for their tickets. It could be a different story. But premieres in Hollywood are actually nothing of the sort. A film will already have been shown several times in the clandestine process of test screening. No matter whether you are a novice director or Steven Spielberg, every major film is tested before release. For Simon West, director of Paramount's summer offering Tomb Raider, it's an uncomfortable but necessary experience.
But you have no idea really if the whole film works until you put it in front of an audience. And that is the scariest moment, because you've spent a year and a half making this thing, and you put it up in front of 500 people who could care less about the film. They have nothing invested in it. They could love it or they could hate it. And it's the most terrifying and also the most insightful time, because they always find things that you never ever spotted.
The test audience are asked a number of simple questions about the movie. Did they understand it? Did they like the star? And most importantly, would they recommend it to a friend? The data is used to fine-tune movies prior to release.
Makes it feel very light.
Dean Devlin is the writer and producer behind such blockbusters as Independence Day and Godzilla.
You're always thinking that it's horrible until the minute you hear people laughing in a theater. I mean, I don't know any filmmaker, whether they make popcorn movies like I do or if they make art films, every filmmaker, no matter what they tell you in the interview, inside they're dying until they actually hear someone laugh at a joke or cry at a, you know, I mean, you just can't help it. It's because you're sitting in a room with your editor and you're laughing at jokes thinking they're great, and then you put them out in the theater and nobody laughs and you're suddenly a stand-up comic who bombed. It's the worst feeling in the world.
We're doing it Tuesday at 7:30. Just want to get there about 6:30. Just want to get your opinion on it.
Tim Bevan is the producer behind romantic comedies Notting Hill and Bridget Jones' Diary.
You sit with the audience and they have to fill in forms and all the rest of it, but actually what we always do is we send the girls straight into the ladies' loos, because that's where you'll get the instant reaction, and you know, and all of that is informative.
Kathy Conrad has already produced 11 films, including Scream, the successful horror movie, but testing them still makes her nervous.
When I go to a preview, you know, which is the worst experience of all time, when you preview a movie in front of 600 people that don't know how to spell, and they're like critiquing you and deciding how you're going to live or die. It's so tense, you know, you just go outside, like and they're filling out the little cards, and everyone's quiet, and everyone's walking around the lobby. I know we're going to be editing for another 5 months, or can we lock the picture? And they're from like New Jersey, and you're like, you know?
The studios are so protective of their investment that they try to control all access. Leaks in the press or on the internet can cost them dearly. Fox's science fiction adventure Independence Day was the #1 hit of 1996. It took $800 million at the box office. But right up until release, they had no idea just how audiences would react. The studio executive in charge of test screening was so worried that he even kept the location secret from the producer, Dean Devlin.
He was very worried about these test screenings getting printed on the internet. So he had arranged for 3 different theaters around the country to be told that we were going to do the test there. And he didn't tell us which one it was until we were in the airplane. But I do remember that we were in Las Vegas, which is a very odd place to test screen a movie. And we're sitting in the theater getting ready for it to start. And the audience doesn't know what movie they're going to see. They just know that they're coming to see a new film from 20th Century Fox. And the opening title started, and all of a sudden it said Independence Day. Well, just when the name Independence Day came on, the place went insane. I mean, they were screaming, and people started standing up, and they were yelling, and Roland and I were in the back of the room looking at each other in shock. It's like, we didn't even know that many people knew of the film. Whatnot was that excited about it. And then the film broke, which is like your worst nightmare in a test screening, because the film, you could actually see the little leader go, and we're like, oh! And the screaming kept going until they had taken the film down, respliced it, put it back up, and started. And during that time, while there was no film, the lights were up and the screaming was still happening, Roland and I looked at each other, and it was the first time we thought, we might have lightning in a bottle.
Test screenings give the audience real power over Hollywood. Negative feedback can mean whole new scenes being created. Ron Bass wrote the hits Rain Man and Entrapment. He's learned to appreciate what audiences can offer, especially when testing his romantic comedy My Best Friend's Wedding, which stars Julia Roberts.
A lot of writers are very, very hostile to the testing process, and I was for years. The older I get, the more I like the testing process, because the more I learn how much smarter the audience is than the rest of us. No kidding, they really are. And you can test the same film in different places in this country. Boy, the audience reaction is remarkably the same.
The movie, the audience, believe it or not, did not like Julia Roberts. She scored the least well of any character in the movie, which is not good when you're Julia Roberts and you have a Julia Roberts movie. Plus, it's almost impossible to achieve, to have the audience not like her.
We see the first thing, we get up, we know even before we see the scores that the scores weren't bad. The scores were actually pretty good, but not like we were hoping for. We were hoping for this monster, fabulous movie that everyone would adore. My God, we had Julia Roberts. How could we hope for anything less?
Ron Bass met with the producer and director to come up with some extra scenes to solve the problem. But this would involve expensive reshoots for the studio executive, Lucy Fisher.
We walked across the street into the meeting with Lucy. I picture the 6th scene. She says, we want to do them all. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what it is. Let's get Julia on board. Somebody call Julia.
He loves you.
The test audience had disliked Julia Roberts' character scheming to stop her best friend from marrying Cameron Diaz.
I haven't done much that I'm proud of the last 3 days.
The additional scene gave Roberts a moment of redemption.
I'd like to take you to the church so you can walk down that aisle and marry the man of our dreams.
A scene where Julia confronts Cameron Diaz and apologizes to her, and that whole business worked great, and the audience forgave her because she...
You know, I mean, a studio sees really exciting scores and they go to a test screening and they see people getting really, really excited, then, you know, they might double your advertising budget or do something as drastic as that.
Studios spend almost as much on selling a summer blockbuster as they do on making it. Sums of between $50 to $100 million on worldwide promotion are now common. Most campaigns start with a poster. For the public, it's the first they're likely to see of the movie.
MGM, United Artists, how can I help you?
At MGM, decisions must be made about the poster for Hannibal, the sequel to the hugely successful The Silence of the Lambs. Ridley Scott, director of Gladiator and Black Hawk Down, is called in to approve poster designs for his movie.
Nice, you know? It's not about advertising anymore, it's about films about advertising.
That's right. It's the movie in a movie. We have something to go out for early outdoor.
Yeah.
That just is, we think, really striking. To go out for billboards, bus shelters.
Okay.
Very just clean signature of Hannibal.
Yes.
I think the point of distinction about Hannibal is he's lethal, but he has an elegant presence.
Okay.
That's his signature.
Do you want me to say what I really think? Or do you want to switch the camera off?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's rather cosmetic. I think, oddly enough, he looks quite friendly and rather glamorous, okay? He doesn't look threatening or intimidating, which you ought to look. It's a traditional, elegant way of doing it. But I just think it could have been more aggressive and more dangerous. I think the aggressive thing about this poster is the staples holding the piece of paper together. The letter form has been slashed across his mouth. But the thing I love about it is the staples and this, and it seems to be on a map, right? An old map or a piece of paper. So it also goes into the subtext of number 2, where is he? Whereas here we're seeing a rather cosmetic view of a guy I wouldn't mind having dinner with.
Well, I think you can make it more dangerous, but I got
After many revisions, the final poster was agreed. Seemingly little like the marketing men's ideas, but something worked. The movie took $350 million at the box office. Posters raise awareness of a movie, but it's the press that brings the audience in. Studios spend millions wooing the media at press junkets like this.
You know, he's so extremely special. He's very, very creative.
All the great art pieces have that quality to me.
What keeps it fun and exciting, and that's how you grow.
Stars and directors are parked in hotel rooms for the world media to be wheeled in to obtain sound bites.
Kubrick and Steven together, that's an incredible kind of combination.
Steven Spielberg's futuristic fable AI, featuring the child star Haley Joel Osment and Jude Law.
I'm here until tomorrow, and then I go to Slovakia, and then I'm off to Japan, and then I'm back, so...
The film's publicists control the allotted 5-minute interviews with military precision. They need maximum publicity in the shortest time possible.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
No one involved can escape this grueling process. It can make grown men weep.
It's very time-consuming, it's very difficult, and you answer the same question a million times in 10 different languages, and you do feel like a bit of a traveling salesman, but on the other hand, it is a big part of being a film director, being a traveling salesman. You have to go in and sell the idea to the studio in the first place. You have to persuade them that you're the person to do the film, or if it's your project, that this is the project that they should put the money into. So a large part of film directing is selling from the very beginning to the very end.
1 latte with 2 sugars.
It's in the star's contract that they have to publicize the movie, but no one pretends to like it.
I suppose that's why I'm sitting here. Well, I've been sitting here for hours, and, doing publicity. I think, as an actor, I suppose I do feel a certain amount of responsibility, filmmaking is so ridiculously expensive, so you do feel like you have to make an effort to sell the thing.
The director, Tim Burton, also has his shoulder to the wheel.
There is that heavier pressure when there's more money. That's true. I mean, that definitely is true, but again, it's still somewhat abstract. I think I just try to keep it at the base core of, here's this movie and I'm going to try to do a good job and let all the other chips fall where they do,
Occasionally, a studio has spent so much on a movie that they try to carry favor with lavish media junkets. Disney Studios was touting Pearl Harbor as the new Titanic. Their press kit landed on the doorstep of journalist Mike Walker.
So they'll send you a first-class ticket and invite you to go to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor. Why don't you come to Hawaii? It's beautiful this time of year. You send 200 guys to Pearl Harbor. What did they spend on that? Was it $5 million just on the publicity junket? I mean, that used to be what you paid for a movie. That's what they paid just to, fly people out there and have that big party on the aircraft carrier. It was outrageous. But they expect something back for it. And you know what? Let's say out of those 200 journalists, there were 3 guys who said, you know what? I think this movie's crap, and I don't even like the stars, and I think Ben Affleck was an idiot when I met him, I don't think anybody actually said that, but let's say there were 3. Okay, that's not bad. 3 out of 200. You spent $5 million, and all you've got is, 200 journalists going, oh, I loved it, and it was wonderful, and this is Joe Blow reporting right from the battleship, and here we are this morning on Good Morning Akron, and, I mean, it's wonderful stuff.
But sometimes good publicity just can't be bought. 1,000 miles from Tinseltown in a rundown house in Austin, Texas, lives public enemy number 1 as far as Hollywood is concerned. It's here that Harry Knowles runs his internet site, Ain't It Cool News. He has a legion of spies that report back from test screenings, giving the lowdown on future releases, which he then publishes free from the Hollywood spin doctors.
I became critical of the process, right, which nobody was really doing, right? Warner Brothers said he shouldn't be allowed to print that stuff. Somebody should put a stop to him. The head publicist of Sony said, it's scary. It's like Revenge of the Audience or something. And I'm just a kid in Austin, Texas.
But with such a huge fan base, the kid from Texas has become a major worry for Hollywood.
Harry is a frustrated filmmaker who has enormous power, enormous, influence in the young audience. Obviously, just the bane of the studio's existence, since he has spies in every preview getting the word out, whether it's right or wrong.
Knowles had previewed MGM's movie Rollerball with such savagery that John McTiernan, the director, decided to stave off further criticism.
So he calls me up, says, is this Harry Knowles? I go, yep. And he says, hi, this is John McTiernan. I know who you are, Mr. McTiernan. And he says, well, I know who you are as well. I said, I imagine you do. And he says, making a film called Rollerball. I know. He says, well, would you like to see it?
Knowles and a couple of his friends were flown to New York in the director's private jet.
Well, we get to New York. They put us in a limo. They put us up in the Four Seasons, 40 stories up. Amazing view. Most luxurious hotel room.
Then Knowles was given a private screening of the new movie with the expectation that he would change his bad reviews.
I get back to Austin, I sit down, and it was the most painful review I've ever written because I genuinely liked John McTiernan. I thought he was a great guy, really good guy. He had made a terrible movie.
You know, Harry works in this strange vacuum. He doesn't know how much people go through to get a movie made. He's never really made a movie. He wants to. He may envy people that do, but he should be fair with all the power he has. And to prejudge McTiernan, rightly or wrongly, is unfair.
Studios are having to pay more and more money just to persuade people to go and watch their films. Advertising has gone up 800% in the last 20 years, and the clever marketing man is always looking for a new angle. Merchandising really took off with Star Wars back in 1977 and can sometimes bring in more than ticket sales. Today's big idea is fast food. Spy Kids, the children's adventure, benefited from an unusual bit of enterprise by the director Robert Rodriguez.
There's a lot of competition now. I mean, there's so many movies out there. You've got to figure out a way to cut through. No one had heard of Spy Kids. You know, most family films, or most films in general, are all remakes of old projects. You know, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, or it's all stuff that you've heard of because people in studios don't want to take a chance on something you haven't heard of. Spy Kids, no one had heard of. It wasn't a known property, so you had to figure out a way to cut through.
Rodriguez cut a trailer and took it to McDonald's.
Early on, back in '99, I had already had a little trailer I had cut together. This was, you know, a year and a half, 2 years before the movie comes out. And we showed it to McDonald's, and they signed on based on that because it was their audience. It was kids, it was action, it was family. All the stuff that they wanted to be a part of that movie. And that's huge promotional support. It makes a movie feel bigger. It helps cut through. And McDonald's helped make it a bigger picture, made it feel like, oh, this must be something special because 21 million people walk into a McDonald's every day and they see your movie being advertised for 3 weeks. So it's like in the 3-week period, it's like 650 million people that are being exposed to your movie.
The McDonald's idea worked a treat. Spy Kids went on to make a whopping $144 million at the box office. Promotional images of any movie tell the audience what to expect. Get the message wrong and box office death can be just around the corner.
Marketing campaigns that don't work are more obvious than ones that do work. A great recent example is The Mexican. Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, together for the first time, and the movie was marketed brilliantly. The only problem was the thing that they were trying to sell the audience wasn't there. It wasn't a romantic comedy. They didn't spend very much time together on screen. What time they did spend, they didn't spend hugging and kissing and flirting. They spent it bickering and fighting. And the audience smelled it. And they said, you know what? We're not going to go see this. We're not going to go see this. That's when marketing is most obviously fouled up, when the people that are putting the movie out are trying to sell a product that they don't have.
Huh? You're back to the same old selfish, self-involved, vile, disgusting...
Oh, God, you...
Self...
Now, if anyone is being selfish...
Oh, now you blame shift?
Would you...
You are blame shifting? You are a shifter,
the
Gary!
analyzing
You're a shifter!
terminology, please.
Time out!
Ah!
And action!
The attachment of A-list stars usually makes marketing easier. Just their presence in the film is often enough to get people into the cinemas, but it can also create problems.
It was always meant to be this interesting, quirky, small movie, and even with Brad and Julia in it, we still felt it was that way. But of course, once you start marketing it, I mean, how do you market a movie that has Gandolfini and Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts in it, and platform it out in a couple of theaters? And you know, they couldn't do that. So I think because of that, we kind of pulled in two directions.
I don't know, they look like tourists. They're evil.
It was the attachment of the two stars that helped the Mexican get a green light. But ironically, their star power was the very thing that caused box office problems. The marketing messages had become confused.
That's where you get really frustrated, because you know you've made a certain type of film, but the studio doesn't necessarily want to sell the movie you've made, because they're not quite sure if that movie is going to bring people into the seats. And their attitude will always be, it doesn't matter what we do to bring them in the theater. If they like the movie, they like the movie. But as a filmmaker, you really feel like, well, if you made good Chinese food, you shouldn't sell a pizza. You know, because if you're in the mood for pizza, no matter how good that Chinese food is when you get in there, it's not what you were looking for.
The secrecy of production is over. The marketing frenzy has peaked. And the crumbs from the glittering premieres and parties have been swept up. Surely it's all plain sailing from here. Enter the critics. It's the American premiere of Universal Studios' Captain Corelli's Mandolin, the adaptation of the best-selling novel starring Nicolas Cage and Penelope Cruz, had opened first in Britain, receiving some terrible reviews.
I just wanted to do this for me, you know, try to step out of the box a little bit, think a little differently, and play an Italian soldier from 1930s.
The cast and crew have arrived from England, shell-shocked by the harsh and insulting criticism. Alexander Walker of the Evening Standard had been particularly ferocious. And the actor John Hurt is still licking his wounds.
People like Alexander Walker I could shoot. I think it's absolutely outrageous behavior, if you really want the truth of the matter, and I don't mind saying so. I think that his reviews were utterly irresponsible. I could not tell particularly from his review, what motivated that kind of vitriol.
The producer Tim Bevan is putting on a brave smile for the sake of team morale.
Nobody likes a bad review, but at the end of the day, we know when a film's crap. We know when we've made a real turkey, basically. And the thing was, with Corelli, is I knew the film wasn't as bad as the critics were painting it. Is that it had provoked some sort of reaction to the movie that was sort of beyond the film. So my job was to console the filmmakers at that point, because I felt that, you know, I know when the film ain't no good. And Corelli may not be perfect, but it ain't a bad movie.
Actor Woody Harrelson feels he's had more than his fair share of critical barbs for movies such as Natural Born Killers and The People vs. Larry Flint, a civil liberties drama about the Hustler magazine publisher.
What stings the most is you do something that you care about and people don't see it. Listen, I mean, I could do a whole thing on critiquing the critics, you know, where you would know that I was right, you know? Talk about a leeching industry, you know? I mean, it's an industry of leeches that we supply the blood to, you know? That, to me, is the worst part of this, you know, this industry, is that they have so much sway, because I think a movie should come out and people should just see it or not based on, well, its own merits, but also on word of mouth, you know? For it to be decided for you whether you get this or this is like...
The movie reviewers liked the films, but the mainstream press savaged them for their controversial subject matter.
You know, you can tell from the way I'm saying it, I have a lot of resentment that the way things turned out with Larry Flint, the way they turned out with Natural Born Killers. I mean, I put a lot of work and a lot of, you know, my blood and soul into those, particularly into People vs. Larry Flint. I never worked so hard, man.
Generating a buzz for a movie is a gamble and not a science. One difficult decision for Hollywood is whether to risk sending their latest pet project to a major film festival prior to release. Cannes remains the most prestigious festival in the world. International critics gather to praise the creme de la creme, but the Hollywood studios are deeply suspicious.
The Hollywood powers that be have got it in their heads that there are some big reasons why it's dangerous to come to Cannes. The French critics, which they view as being very, very tough, potentially very hostile to big budget films, big budget American films, or simply to commercial films. Whether that's true or not can be debated, but there's a perception that that's true. That the feeling is, why take a chance? Why take a chance with utterly failing with the spotlight of the international media on you and falling in your face, and really, there's a lot to lose, in other words. There's potentially not that much to gain and a hell of a lot to lose.
The domino effect caused by negative criticism is the last thing a studio needs. So DreamWorks executive Jeffrey Katzenberg was anxious about screening their irreverent animated movie Shrek at the festival. For support, he had brought along Mike Myers, who provides the voice of Shrek.
Yeah, I have to say, it's pretty surreal. You know, the idea that we would make a movie about a big green, stinky ogre, and that we would be Saturday night in tuxedos, walking up the red carpet into the Palais to, you know, probably the greatest festival of cinema in the world. And there we all are on black tie, you know, Saturday night. I have to tell you, my heart was in my throat. But they loved it, you know, at the end. You know, it was extraordinary reception for the movie, but it was a big gamble.
The gamble taken on the French Riviera ended with an Oscar in 2002 for Best Animated Movie. Trying to stop a bad press is like holding back the Pacific tide. But after an investment of tens of millions of dollars, the studios are not going to go down without a fight. Universal Studios are keen to counteract the negative press for Captain Corelli's mandolin. So, at a substantial cost, the star Nicolas Cage is immortalized in wet cement outside Mann's Chinese Theatre in Hollywood.
I mean, it's all about noise. It's like what we were talking about last night, and, you know, another million photographs. Apparently the cruise photographs are all over the press at home today. This weekend, there are 2 or 3 films opening that are all vying for attention, as it were. And so something like this, where you get onto the TV and you get into the fast press and all the rest of it, it's just to get the content, you know, so people are aware of it, basically. Because it is so competitive, and you're fighting to get your head just up above the parapet. Basically, when you come to market a film like this, you work out who your core audience is, and then after that is you want to make sure that they are made aware of the film as many times as possible. And all of this just helps that noise, basically. Boom, 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 boom. It's, you know, it's technical.
Opening weekend is when it all gets real. The next 48 hours will open or close cinema doors across the world.
It's a light switch that goes on or off. I mean, movies either work or they don't work. There's not really, oh, it kind of worked, it might work, it either does or it doesn't.
Knowing the importance of the opening weekend, marketing men are not averse to trying to influence events.
Marketing geniuses at the studios will tell you you can absolutely buy an opening weekend if you're willing to pay for it. You can saturate the airwaves with really hip, really fast-moving, really active, really attractive TV commercials for the last 10 days before a movie opens. And you can get people to go out on Friday and Saturday to see the movie.
And a huge opening weekend is what every studio aims for. Being top of the charts for just 1 week is enough to kickstart a global campaign. It doesn't matter if audiences decline rapidly afterwards, the film is up and running. Producer Joel Silver is a master of commercial movies. His summer offering is the crime thriller Swordfish.
I thought Pearl Harbor was a satisfying movie. You know, it was #1 2 weeks in a row, and then we came out and we blew it out of #1. So it was a great situation, but every week since then has been another movie. The Tomb Raider, and then this week was Fast and Furious. I mean, they just keep coming, and and what happens is they open huge and they fall apart, and somebody else opens up huge and falls apart.
A good opening weekend in America for a big picture is anything from $30 million upwards, although Spider-Man's $115 million has upped the ante. Even with a massive drop-off in audience, the film will reach the magical $100 million mark within a couple of weeks.
I think the $100 million marker is a huge one that, I mean, pretty much any film that busts $100 million gets a certain type of respect, because it really is a landmark number.
And there's an added incentive for a big opening. Studios normally give 50% of the box office receipts to the theaters. But on opening weekend, the studios get to keep 80% of ticket sales. Planet of the Apes was Fox Studios' rallying point for the summer 2001 offensive. Tim Burton, its director, makes unpredictable films which sometimes strike gold.
All film is an experiment, no matter what you're doing. And that's the people that pretend that they know all the ideas and know what a hit movie and all that sort of thing is, they're kidding themselves. So all film is an experiment. So I actually try to enjoy that aspect. I try to enjoy the unknown, because it is unknown. And this was a perfect example of that, you know. There's a bunch of talking apes. It's, you know, gee, is that a hit movie? I don't know. You know, it's kind of funny, you know.
Burton's uncertainty was dispelled on opening weekend when his movie took $68 million in the US. It was a commercial juggernaut, but at least one cast member had reservations.
There is too much stress on not so much what the film's like, but how many, you know, what the box office figures were like for that first week. And we did a historic, you know, first weekend, or a non-holiday weekend, but it would be nicer that people were talking about the nature of the film other than, you know, that figure. But actually it was quite nice, 70 million or whatever it was.
By the end of the opening weekend of The Fast and the Furious, writer Gary Scott Thompson had every reason to celebrate. The teenage street race story had taken $40 million in the US. And with production costs of only $38 million, it was already speeding towards profit.
I guess what it does, is same with an actor or a writer, is that everybody looks at you in a different light suddenly. You're doing the same thing you always were, but there's validity to what you've done. You now have a hit behind you, and therefore, you know, let's get the guy who has the hit and see if we can get another hit. And that it's the same with actors, writers, directors, everybody. Everyone benefited from The Fast and the Furious.
The Fast and the Furious was a surprise hit, surpassing all expectations. The rest of the summer blockbusters were jostling for position week on week. Business was brisk, with each movie opening bigger than the last. Tomb Raider received terrible reviews, but it didn't miss a beat at the box office, with an opening weekend of $47 million and a huge potential for sequels.
A movie like Tomb Raider, which I defy you to explain to me, I have no idea what it was about. I cannot have a clue what was happening. I don't have any idea. But it was a marketing triumph, because the movie opened huge and the audience went into the theater and said, what is this movie about? I mean, I assume they'll try to continue a sequel. That won't be hard, because the first one didn't make any sense, so they can make another one that doesn't make any sense.
With autumn approaching, the studios turned to the task of analyzing the summer results. The critics handed out some awful reviews. But more importantly for Hollywood, the public spent a record number of dollars. Pearl Harbor was a kamikaze critical failure, but Disney were delighted with a final take of $450 million. Fox Studios' Planet of the Apes monkeyed around with the 60s original, but it still took nearly $360 million worldwide. Paramount's Tomb Raider was buried by everyone over the age of 16, but it still managed a respectable $275 million. At Warner Brothers, Steven Spielberg's AI had performed badly in the US, but picked up well in the rest of the world. And Universal Studios were licking their wounds over Captain Corelli, which took $60 million worldwide after production costs of $57 million. But summer 2001's top film was Shrek, the ugly ogre, clearing more than $475 million. Most of the studios were ultimately satisfied with their returns, but with one big green exception, their blockbusters had left their audiences wanting. Hit movies are fed by money, scripts, talent, and hype. There is no such thing as a safe bet. The magic formula for success remains mysterious and elusive.
There's something about the genetics, the DNA of a movie, which is really reductively what makes it work or not work. And we spend all our time trying to figure it out, but truly, if we had figured it out, all movies would be good. So, you know, you cast a kind of 20/20 hindsight look over your shoulder. You never really know. You learn how to do things better. The best you can try to do is not repeat your mistakes. You just make new ones.
But I think the minute you do it cynically because you think someone else is going to like it, I think the audience is so much more sophisticated and so much smarter. They smell it. They smell when they're being told something is supposed to be a hit movie or a success or a good film. You have to really believe that. You have to really have that passion. And then maybe that passion becomes infectious.
Hollywood takes risks on a scale few other industries would dare to contemplate. Its products are a mixture of inspiration, greed, and sentimentality. So as long as we keep on buying into the dream, the Hollywood machine will keep on running.
Costumes and a star-studded cast next on BBC Two. Passion at fever pitch as Colin Firth dons the breeches for a celebrated adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Then after that, there's a chance to catch up with the big blockbuster thriller 24. More details of that coming right up.
Now on BBC One, and running slightly later than planned in some listings, New York call girl Jane Fonda is the only lead in Donald Sutherland's obsessive search for his missing friend. With some strong language and scenes of violence and those of a sexual nature, Klute.